start.
Okay, so my name is Samara, and my topic is like the evolution of graphics and more specifically like Nintendo. So like brief little history, like when Nintendo first began, the original when Nintendo was first like founded, the purpose of it was to sell cards, which I thought was really interesting because I didn't know that. I thought it was always like a gaming company, but they first sold cards, and then they, throughout the years, to keep up with like to stay relevant, they would change manufacturing things. So they were first in the card industries, like selling like cards, like actual like playing cards, and then they became a toy manufacturer, and then they slowly like developed into just electronics and games. The first handheld Nintendo device was the Nintendo Game & Watch. As you can see, like the graphics are like, not that they're bad, but at the time it was kind of progressive, only because there was no other game that could be portable. So Nintendo had already created the color TV game. I don't know if you guys have like seen the game where it's like there's two sticks and they move up and down, and it's like the ball's in the middle and you have to like hit it. So that was that was like the first game. No, that was a game that you could play at home with your family, and it had like 5 color schemes. And at that time, that was like that was also really progressive. So what they did was they made a handheld game device, and it was actually based off of calculator technology, which is why it looks like that, which is why it's black and white, and why it like is so small and stuff like that. So along with technology not being quite advanced yet, it was also why the game was so limited in graphics and also only 2 colors. Unlike the color TV game console, Nintendo Game & Watch did not have the color, but it had the ability to display 5 color schemes. This new handheld console was a smash, selling 43 million units. It had oh yeah, so the trade-off for being portable was the graphics and the colors. And at the time, games were still more two-dimensional than like solid like figures, which is why the character looks like that. And then in 1983, the Nintendo Entertainment System was released, and it was another huge success. It was extremely close to what someone could play in an arcade, and it had a lot of color and became so Nintendo became really popular because of how bold they used their colors. And then, so at the time, the still games were only 2-dimensional, although it had color, was not a large variety yet. Nintendo soon became known for their use of bold colors. The graphics on this game also weren't as square-like features unless compared to the other previous gaming systems like the Atari. So Atari had the Atari's colors were a lot more muted and pixelated, while Nintendo's was still like very like cube-like, but it was a lot better compared to Atari, and it was a lot brighter. And the consumers really took to the fact that you could play as like a person, because before it was only like car games, and this time like Mario. And then fast forward to 1991 with the Super Nintendo, and the graphics had improved a lot more. At that point, they were able to produce 200 colors simultaneously and have more volume and shape. And then the Nintendo 64 was another popular console, especially when it was competing with CDs like the PlayStation. And then there was another game console that was also CD, but it wasn't doing as well. So the more basic shapes like circles were much clearer in this game system, along with the shapes being more 3-dimensional. With that said, it meant that the graphics were much better and color being a lot bolder, as well as the game also being even more recognizable. This game also had a different way of showing textures as well as the shapes they use color, up until the GameCube, where it really sets itself apart from the competitors. So I don't know if you can tell that well, but like in the background, like the way they played with color and shading and stuff was very revolutionary at the time, because like I said before, like a lot of people were being basic, and like while Nintendo was still kind of basic, they were setting themselves apart from the competitors. And then lastly, the Wii. So while the Wii wasn't like a huge jump in like graphics wise, I wanted to include this because I wanted to recognize like how basic the shapes were, but how like it also like was a big deal. So Me is a feature in the Wii where someone can make a miniature version of themselves or an avatar. What's significant about the Me is that the simplicity of it. They use standard shapes like circles and rectangles and also spheres and cylinders. And while not graphically phenomenal in any way, there was a lot of emphasis in style, which is more clear on the Me because of how basic it was. And then, I just want to go more in depth in the geometry. So graphics and the images are presented are essential to video games. And recently with technology like being so advanced now, like video games are becoming more like movies in a way. Like when you see gameplay, like sometimes I'm mesmerized by how well like the visuals of it all is like presented. So when video game programmers first begin developing figures and scenes, they start as a basic geometric shape of objects. Geometric shapes and the way they interact with each other is the basic foundation of video games, from the way they use circles, squares, and trapezoids. Dimensions is also very important. In the past, as shown, the games were very flat and two-dimensional compared to now where the games look like you're watching a movie with actual actors and create a sense of depth. Video game programmers start inserting additional lines and circles and squares and other shapes into these original lines at places to give the video graphics depth and three-dimensional looking, and they start inserting colors as well. They also use geometric shapes by rotating, reflecting, and using use of similarities in making the video graphics more around the screen during action sequences. I also tried looking for like hyperbolic geometry and non-Euclidean geometry, but there wasn't a lot of information, and I didn't want to give you the wrong information, so I decided to not put that into representation. Questions? Yes.
So you mentioned on your slides that I think on the N64 slide that something about the GameCube at the very end, and I'm just curious, how big of a leap was the GameCube in terms of processing power and capabilities?
Well, the GameCube was a lot more clear compared to the Nintendo 64, because at the time of the Nintendo 64, like the polygons and the shapes that they were using, they were a lot like smoother. But when it came to 64, it had a lot more like definition and like just like visually wise, like it was a lot more clear and clean.
So why did you pick this topic?
Well, I grew up with like playing Nintendo. Like my dad has the Nintendo 64, and he has like the Nintendo like entertainment system. So like as a child, like I was always playing that, and then I always like played with the Wii and the DS,